lands, es yoshvei haaretz, the inhabitants of the land, v'geirashtamu mipanecha. V'geirashtamu is an interesting expression. It means, and you will drive them away from before you. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to hand them over to you, and then your job is to get rid of them, right? Now, why didn't just HaKadosh Baruch Hu get rid of them? Right, would have been easier. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to give you the land, I'm going to deliver the inhabitants, your job is to get rid of them. So what is this idea that Kadosh Baruch Hu had to encourage us to get rid of them? As if we wouldn't want to get rid of them? Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu is delivering the land to us. We want to live together with them, and that is precisely what a Kadosh Baruch Hu was worried about. Kadosh Baruch Hu was worried about us living together with them. The Sforno explains, and he says, this idea of Geirash Tamu, that you will chase them out, you will get rid of them, says the Sforno, Hadavar Masur biyetchem. This was passed over to you. This is your obligation, says the Sforno, to Bnei Israel. V'atem al titatzlu bazeh. Don't be lazy. Right? Don't be lazy, but finish the job. Kimo sheheid bahem Yehoshua bi'amru ad ana atem misrafim lavola reshes es haaretz. Right? What does Yehoshua say to Bnei Israel? He says, what's going on? How long are you going to be lazy? In other words, how long are you going to be lazy before you go and conquer the land? What is Yehoshua talking about, right? When Yehoshua says this, what's the idea? So the Mitzudas David on that pasuk in Yehoshua wants to explain that this was sort of like human nature. The Mitzudas David says, "Ritzono lomar hen yadati machshavosechem." I know what you're thinking. This is what Yehoshua says to them. I know what you're thinking. Ma she'enchem sholchim lichtov gevulot haaretz ulachalka. The reason why you're not going to conquer the rest of the land and to divide it, ki tachshavu, because you're thinking as follows. This is what Yehoshua says to them. Im kol echad yakir chelko. If everybody has their portion, in other words, what's happening? We're going to do battle, right? We're going to go conquer the land. Remember, how's the Kadosh Baruch Hu going to give it to us? Ma'at ma'at, a little bit at a time. Says the Mitzudas David, imagine the army, right? The army of Jews going through the land. What are they going to do? They're going to conquer one piece of territory, then they're going to conquer another piece of territory, then they're going to conquer another piece of territory. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen is they capture one piece of territory, and the Shevet whose land is there, what are they going to say? Okay, I'm done. Right? I'm done, I'm finished. Right? So now when they go to conquer the next piece of territory, what happens? They're missing people. And so they conquer the next piece of territory, and then the Shevet of the next piece of territory says, okay, I'm done. So they're afraid. Right? They're literally afraid to move on with the conquering of the land, says Yehoshua, because they're afraid that what's going to happen, the more land they conquer, the less people will be fighting for the remaining land, and the more difficult it will be. So why should we get started? Right? Let's just do this, what we've gotten until now, and shine. Right? Why do we have to go on like that? So Yehoshua says to them, according to the Mitzudas David, Yehoshua says to them, Halo Hashem hu hanosein lachem es haaretz. What are you worried about? Right? Even if this happens, even if one Shevet after another Shevet drops out, you're not winning because you are outnumbered. Right? You're not winning because you are outnumbered. You're winning, why? Because a Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the land. So if a Kadosh Baruch Hu gives you the land when all of the Shvatim are fighting, Kadosh Baruch Hu will give you the land when half the Shvatim are fighting. Kadosh Baruch Hu will give you the land if one Shevet is fighting. In other words, you're thinking logically and strategically. Says Yehoshua, this whole thing, it defies logic and strategy. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu moving. I said, Kadosh Baruch Hu giving you the land. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the land. Okay.
But there was a template for picking that way because two and a half tribes, Reuben and Gad and Kasisha,
But they had a
stayed over. They wanted that land there. The warning was, okay, you can have it,
but you have to come and fight.
Right.
Kadosh Baruch Hu understood. Pass that to Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's brings to mind this idea that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is fighting. Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the land. So it doesn't matter whether you have, all the Shvatim fighting or half the Shvatim fighting. Okay. The reason Reuben, Gad, and Chatzi, Shevet, Menashe had to come over was so as to not discourage the others. That's part of and that's what Yehoshua is saying here. That's what Bnei Yisrael were worried about. So somebody sent me a cute joke. I don't usually share jokes, but and perhaps they sent it to you also, or you saw it. They said that the Russian prime minister assembled his cabinet. And he says to them, gentlemen, I have very bad news. I don't know if any of you saw it, right? Very bad news. So they said, what's the bad news? So he said, I've been informed by our intelligence services that we're going to be attacked. So who's going to attack us? So he said, China. And we're going to have to go to war with China. So the people, his cabinet was astounded. We're going to have to go to war with China. How many billions of people are there in China? Billions. How many are there in Russia? Millions, not billions. How are we going to defeat China? Right? How are we going to do that? So the president says to them, he says, listen, don't worry. You don't have to worry. Look at Israel. Right? Israel's this tiny country and all the surrounding Arabs, right, have attacked it time and time again. And it's not a matter of quantity, right? And Israel has nevertheless, right? The Jews have nevertheless defended themselves against all their enemies. So suddenly one of the ministers raises his hand and says, Mr. Prime Minister, how many Jews do we have in Russia? Right? The idea, right? It's not the quantity, right? It's not the quantity, it's the quality. But the idea that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who is fighting our battle. Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's fighting our battle when we come into Eretz Yisrael. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who continues to fight our battle. Sometimes we see that more clearly, sometimes less clearly. Okay, but it is nevertheless the case. Okay, the next pasuk, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Lo sichros lahem velelo heihem bris. Very succinct pasuk. What does it say? Do not enter into a covenant with them or with their gods. Right? Very clearly, don't enter into a covenant with them or with their gods. Okay. So very interesting. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu, we already see that a little bit earlier on in Chumash, what are we obligated to do? We're obligated to destroy all of their places of worship. Right? We have to chase them out and we have to destroy their places of worship. So who's going to be around to enter into a bris? Right? Who's going to be around to enter into a deal, into a covenant, into a treaty if we're going to chase them out and we're going to destroy all of their places? So the Meforshim here struggle with trying to understand what this is all about. Clearly, we understand that a bris with the people is one thing. But how are they going to make a bris with their gods, with the gods that these people worship? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu ascribing chas v'shalom power to those deities, as if to say, don't enter into a covenant with those deities? So the Psikta, the halachic medrash, wants to say here, actually the two go hand in hand. That if you enter into a covenant, if you enter into a deal, if you enter into a treaty with the people, you are, by definition, entering into a treaty with their gods. In other words, what's the idea behind that? The idea behind that is that don't expect the people that you enter into the peace deal with, the people that you enter into the treaty with, don't expect them to change. Whereas what's going to happen? They're going to continue to worship their gods, and you're entering into a deal with them, and you're going to, not chase them out of the land. You are in effect declaring a treaty, declaring a deal with their gods as well. So that's the understanding of the Medrash. Not that we're making a separate deal with their deities, with who they worship. But what are we saying? We're saying don't make a deal with the people, because if you make a deal with the people, you are by default making a deal with their gods as well.
You mean like a covenant?
An agreement.
I mean, you make a war I mean, all through the Nevi'im, they had the, Babel and Assyria and Egypt, and they have all these ongoing relationships on and off again. David did it, Shlomo did it, on and on. So those were not religious treaties. I mean, what's his name? Hiram came with Sidon, and they were helping each other. They had all these.
We're talking about the people who live in the land. We're not talking about entering into alliances, right? You're talking about entering into alliances with that country over there, or that country over there, or that country over there. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is coming into the land. We're going to be confronted with the people, and we are going to have to kill them, right? We're not, this is a no prisoners taken kind of conquest. In other words, we're going into the land. We are commanded to literally wipe out the inhabitants of the land.
Unless they agree to keep Sheva Mitzvot.
Correct, right? But if they maintain their allegiance to their deities, to their way of life, we give no ground. We are obligated to destroy them. That's what the challenge was when they came into Eretz Yisrael. We're not talking about today. We're talking about when they came into Eretz Yisrael to conquer it. The Chiti said, "Listen, I like to hang around. I like to stay. I won't bother you. I'll try to be quiet. But I want to." No, they couldn't stay. Right? You want to maintain your style of life. You can either go somewhere else, or we're going to kill you.
You can see the dynamic of this interpretation unfolding in Europe. Bring a whole bunch of Muslims.
And what happens? Radical Islam.
You're saddled with Elohim.
Right? 100%. Right? And that's that's right. That's the idea this is the idea that we see. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, you go into the land, you got to get rid of them. Right? Remember, they had three choices: leave, reject your deities and accept the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, or be killed. Right? Those were their three choices. It sounds a little bit harsh, right? It sounds like, how would this play out in the pages of New York Times, right? It would sound like a caliphate.
Sounds like Sharia law.
Right? Sounds like a caliphate. In other words, if you want to accept, right, if you want to live, you have to accept X, Y, or Z. Right? Obviously, it's not the same. Why not?
In Sharia law, they don't even have a choice of leaving. You're either, if it's dini.
That's precisely the point. In other words, here, what are we saying to those nations when we came in? We said, look, leave, go somewhere else. Right? You want to go somewhere else? We're not chasing you. We're not bothering you. Go somewhere else. Go somewhere else. But you can't stay here in this land. Right? If you're going to stay here in this land, you can either stay on the condition of X, Y, or Z, or you can't be here. We're going to kill you. Right?
So the 48 war, one of the revisionist, ideas was that in some places, we chased the Arabs out. We didn't let them stay because they're going into the 1/5 column in this country. So, the cast of characters changed, but still the options of leaving versus staying is still on the table. I mean, in 1948, some of them were really told to go. Not everybody was told to stay.
Told to go by whom? By the Israelis?
Yes. Yeah.
That's Benny Morris and the
Yeah.
revision.
What?
They went because the other leaders outside told them to leave.
Right, that this will be over and we'll get your house back and everything else. But
Presumably, they might have been afraid.
there were incidences where they were told to.
War is a good cover to effect change. War.
No, I mean, if you leave.
Good way to do quick change. war.
I mean, basically what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying is, I'm going to give you this land, and you have this responsibility. You want this land, you have this responsibility. This is what you have to do in order to get the land. You have to get rid of the inhabitants of the land. Now, obviously, the whole purpose for getting rid of the inhabitants of the land was so that Bnei Yisrael not be influenced by their deities, by their practices. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu understood that if we're going to live together with other nations who are worshiping idols, what's going to happen? We are going to fall prey to that as well. Remember, who is this generation? This is the generation that has demonstrated over and over and over again throughout their 40 years in the desert that at the slightest provocation, they're gone. Right? They're ready to rebel, they're ready to mutiny, they're ready to complain. So Kadosh Baruch says, I understand, you're going to go in here, what do you need? I got to make this as easy as possible for you. Meaning, get rid of everybody. Get rid of everybody. Now we know that there was another option, and that option was they could stay if they would reject idolatry and accept the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Then they could stay, they would be known as a Ger Toshav, meaning an inhabitant in the land. They would not have the status of being a Jew. They would be subject to the laws that govern interaction between Jew and Jew. Okay, but they would be allowed to stay. Because if they reject Avodah Zarah and they accept the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, they are no longer a threat to us. Because we're not going to be influenced by them. So this is the idea that we need to get rid of them. This is the idea that a number of the Meforshim say. Says the Ramban. Let me just share it with you. The Ramban says he's here shelo yichros lahem bris. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu warned us not to enter into an agreement with them. Lahachayos mehem kol neshama, to keep them alive. In other words, they might say, listen, we won't worship our gods. Right? We won't worship our gods. But we're not going to accept Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, right?
Not good enough.
Not good enough. Right? Not good enough. So Yazir shelo yichros lahem bris lahaniach avodah zarah shelahem. You may not enter into a covenant with them if one of the conditions of the covenant is that their avodah zarah, their deities, remain intact. That was not negotiable. Says the Ramban, Ella sheyiharsem v'yishaber matzevo sehem. What do you have to do? You have to completely and utterly destroy their deities, their statues, their holy places. You have to utterly wipe them out. V'yitachein, and it's possible, says the Ramban, sheyomar shelo yichros lahem bris v'im Elohehem ki'achas ella sheyiharsem v'yishaber matzevo sehem. But what will you say? All right, listen, what's the issue? What's the real issue? And this is what happens when we start to think too much. In other words, what will Bnei Yisrael say? That what's the real issue here? The issue is their gods. So you know what? This is what I'll do. I'll destroy their gods. But let them stay. Right? Let them stay. I'll destroy their deities. I'll knock down their houses of worship. I'll destroy their statues. Right? Nothing will be left. But let them remain. Let them stay. That's what we might come to think. V'hakavana lomar ki ba'odam ovdim es Elohehem lo yichros lahem bris. Right? It doesn't matter. Even if you destroy their holy places, as long as they do not renounce them, what's going to happen? They will be a danger to you. In other words, even if you destroy their places, you destroy their holy places, you destroy their avodah zarah, you destroy their deities, unless they reject those. Now, it's not enough that you've destroyed them and they don't exist anymore. But unless they reject them, you can't let them stay in your midst. because they will continue to hold those beliefs. Even if their deities are not there, they will continue to hold those beliefs, and they will ultimately be a temptation to you. They will ultimately be a distraction to you. They will ultimately entice you, or try to entice you over to their way. But, says the Ramban, listen to the last line. Avalim kiblu aleihem shelo la'avod avodah zara. However, if they accept, in other words, you're going to destroy all of their avodah zara, but in addition to the physical destruction, what do they accept? They accept that they will no longer worship these deities. We will give up the concept of avodah zara. If they say that, and you have reason to believe them, so then rashai hu likaimam. What? Then you can allow them to live. So, in other words, the only way they can remain within the land is if they reject the avodah zara. Not even if you destroy all of their avodah zara. Because if they don't reject it, even if you destroy all of their avodah zara, what do we say? Non-negotiable. They can't stay. They have to reject that belief in their avodah zara. Once they do that, then we have something to talk about. But before that, we really don't. Okay. I want to share one more interpretation with you. So this interpretation is as follows. It's the Ibn Ezra. Listen to what he says. He says, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells them, Ki ani agar ma'at ad kalosam. I am going to wipe them out a little bit at a time until they're completely gone. Right? I will hand them over to you until they're completely gone. Uvein kach v'kach lo sichros lahem bris. In other words, what might you think? Okay, listen, maybe this is going to take 10 years or it's going to take 15 years. So you know what? We got to live side by side for, because we're only able to move and to conquer so much at a time. So while we're living side by side, what should we do? We should enter into a deal with them. Right? In other words, look, we're going to ultimately wipe you out. But until that point comes, right, let's figure out a way to live together. Right? That's what the Ibn Ezra says. That's the svara that the Jews would have. Right? A truce.
A business deal.
Whatever. Listen.
Wait, what kind of a truce is that?
Truce is a temporary thing where everybody does their thing and no war.
But this is, I understand. what you're
A
saying.
truce only lasts until somebody breaks it.
And the next one.
Right? That's by definition, right? A truce only lasts until somebody breaks it. So you're going to enter into a truce with them, and you'll say, okay, when it's time to, it's time to continue the battle. Okay, we'll just break the truce. So no, says the
But
Ibn
they-
Ezra.
oh, yeah. Whoa. I don't think it's that simple.
Go ahead.
It's a bilateral kind of a thing. You're making deals.
That's what Muhammad did to the Jews in Saudi Arabia. He just made a
You're
treaty.
trying to
And
tolerate
then
them
he
and
did
a
a
rule.
chutna, and then he broke it at him whenever he was ready.
Alright.
He didn't tell him in advance. He said, the treaty's off. He just came in and said,
Okay.
So in other words, we might think that maybe that's what we should do. In other words, this is not going to happen in 6 days. Right? We're not going to go into the land and conquer it in 6 days. It's impossible. It's too big, and if we do, even if we were physically able to do that, we won't be able to inhabit the land right away, and it will open up the land for the wild animals to come in. So we're going to conquer the land a little bit at a time and settle it as we conquer it. So in this process, okay, listen, we're going to conquer a little bit, but there's still going to be a lot of them around. So why don't we just say, okay, listen, let's do this. While we're here, you're there, all right, we'll enter into a truce. And then down the road, okay.
But we're duplicitous. We're entering into a truce, planning to violate the truce
But you see,
at our time.
I don't, if you think about it, that has always been the issue with our neighbors in the Middle East, right? That they've entered into an agreement with us, not with any intention.
To prepare, all right, they're entering into an agreement with us to prepare for their
To the next war.
capability of destroying us.
Right. other words, it's not like they're, right? In other words, and so says the Ibn Ezra, don't do that, right? Don't think that just because this particular group has not yet been destroyed, that you should enter into a deal with them. No, even if they haven't yet been destroyed, and even if you haven't yet managed to chase them out of the land, nevertheless, do not enter into a deal with them. Do not enter into a covenant with them, because ultimately, if you enter into a deal with the people and you start to interact with the people, what's going to happen? You are going to be influenced by these people. Okay.
What was the situation with the Gibeonim?
The Gibeonim were not sincere converts, right? They came to Yoshua saying that they wanted to convert, and the only reason they wanted to convert was to save themselves. And Yehoshua accepted them, but ultimately what happened is that Yehoshua understood that their conversion was not sincere, and they became the water drawers and the wood choppers, whereas they were relegated to the lower levels of society.
But
That was the
Jewish
Gibeonim.
Nazis, ultimately they considered
No,
Jews.
ultimately they were not considered,
But they were not killed or thrown out. Okay.
because Yehoshua had already accepted them. Okay.
I think these admonitions to, be tough with them, because it's not in our nature. We're Baishanim, Rahmanim, Gomle Chasadim. By nature, that's our thing. So you have to be reinforced to be tough with them. Kick them out, kill them, and then they're the covenants.
You know, I always find it interesting. We are commanded to destroy Amalek, right? To literally kill every man, woman, and child. So, to a certain extent, I say I'm very glad that we don't know who Amalek is today. Because if we knew with certainty who Amalek was today, we would have that obligation, assuming that we were able to, that we had the capabilities, we would have the obligation of killing men, women, and children. Literally wiping out a people, committing genocide. So, I'm sort of glad that we don't know who Amalek is today, because genocide has a bad name, doesn't sit right. But in effect, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding us to do. Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying to us, listen, these people are not allowed to live. Right? They're not allowed to live, and you are the ones who are going to kill them. So you're right. This is not. It's not our nature, right? It's not our nature. Not only is it not our nature, but it almost doesn't feel right. Almost like, how can I wipe out an entire people, like completely destroy Amalek? I mean, isn't that what Hitler, Yamach Shemo, wanted to do to the Jews? Right? He wanted to completely annihilate the Jewish people. And yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding us to do that to Amalek. Exactly what Hitler, Yamach Shemo, wanted to do to us, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding us to do to Amalek. That's difficult. It's difficult. So I, for one, am glad that we don't know who exactly Amalek is. Now, we don't have the capability of doing that. But that doesn't mean that it's not the ideal. And the ideal is, at least the way it seems, the ideal is to wipe out this people Amalek. At least by the Sheva Amamim, the 7 nations who lived in Canaan, we could allow them to stay if they would renounce their idolatry. We're not allowing Amalek to live, even if they renounce everything. They have to be killed.
Intrinsic
David
talent.
led a bunch of them.
What?
David Melech led a bunch of them.
Well, so did Shaul. That's how Shaul lost his kingdom, right?
Yeah, that multiples of them. Shaul left Agag, but David had a couple of hundred Amalekites. Let him go. And the interesting thing is, Chazal say that was compensation, reward for the 400 Alufei Edom that accompanied Esau and then they slunk away during the confrontation one by one.
With Yaakov.
Yeah, so Rashi, famous Rashi that says they were rewarded later on in later times during the Levitic times.
So Amalek is a son, one of the sons of Esau.
Yes.
Amalek was the offspring of
Timnah and Eliphaz? Timnah and Eliphaz. That's where Amalek comes from.
But intrinsic to that Amalek
So he's
persona
given,
was a warmongering, destructive force. And once that was diluted, not only did Amalek disappear, but that force basically dissipated. But if a Hitler showed up, would anyone not say we could destroy Hitler? I mean, there's no.
No, I mean, you have to look at the Torah. It introduces a dose of reality to the Jewish people. It says the world, isn't a perfect place, and you're going to have to be strong under certain circumstances, and you're going to have to make things right. Here's what you have to do. That's the blueprint. Nations who are going to be bad to you have to be treated harshly.
The concept within Amalek is that the only way to eradicate the ideology of Amalek is to eradicate the people of Amalek. In other words, as long as the people are allowed to live, then their ideology will be able to continue. It's almost as if it's built into the genetic makeup of Amalek.
the archetype of evil. Right. Even worse in the Sheva Amim.
Much worse. Much worse. Sheva Amim, we could let them run away, but we can't let Amalek, if we know. Okay. So the on this pasuk, the Torah Tamima offers something interesting. The Torah Tamima says that why is it that after HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands us to wipe out all of their idols, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, don't enter into a covenant with their idols? HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us before, destroy all of their idols, destroy all of their holy places. And now HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes along and says, and don't enter into a covenant with their gods. If their gods are no longer around, so then what kind of covenant can we have with them? In other words, if I've destroyed their places, what kind of agreement can I enter into? So he says as follows. He says, Kavanas HaKasuv, this is Torah Tamima, Kavanas HaKasuv hu lomar she'ein oser krisas bris im ha'umos ella kol od shehem ve'elohehem imahem. That what is the crucial element here? That they and their gods are together, right? They remain connected to each other. Aval im kafru be'elohehem, what we've explained already, if they renounce their idolatry, ein iser lazeh, right? There is no problem of entering into a covenant, into a bris with them. Lazeh amar lo sichros lahem ve'lelohehem, meaning don't enter into a covenant with them and their gods. But if you want to enter into just a covenant with them, that's okay. In other words, the Torah Tamima is explaining how the Gemara looks at this verse. It almost looks at the verse as, don't enter into a covenant with them and their gods. But you can enter into a covenant with them, right? With just them, as long as they've renounced their gods. Kishiyu la perush, the meaning of this is don't enter into a covenant. Kishiyu lahem le Elohehem beris, when their gods are still there, when they're still involved in their gods. V'nis kavein gam lamar ki akores bris laoved avodah zara, that a person who enters into a covenant with someone who is oved avodah zara, ki ilu karas bris laavodah zara atzma. It says if the person has entered into a covenant with the avodah zara itself. Why? For two reasons, says the Torah Tamima. Ha'echad, ki sofo likashel, Kima'amar hasamuch pen yachtiyu. We're going to see in just a moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, as long as their gods are here, as long as their deities are existing, you are going to be seduced. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that's what's going to happen. That's the promise. That's why you can't allow them to be here, because ultimately you will be seduced. V'habeis ki bechinas ha'avodah zara tislabesh be'ovdeha. The Torah Tamima says, because people who worship avodah zarah, who worship idolatry, that has left an impact on them. That has created a kind of person, a kind of philosophy in life. A person who worships idolatry has a philosophy of what does it mean to worship an inanimate object? What does it mean to attribute power and strength to something which is inanimate? And under those circumstances, that what's going to happen, that when we really say you have to destroy their holy places, what the Torah Tamima is saying is you have to destroy their holy places not only physically, not only externally, but also within them. That you have to uproot from them the tendencies that allow them to be Oved Avodah Zarah. Because if you don't do that, what's going to happen is that ultimately those tendencies will find another way to manifest themselves. And when they find this other way to manifest themselves, then again, that is going to be a snare to entrap us. So according to this Torah Tamima, that's why you can't enter into an agreement with them. Because unless you've managed to uproot the Avodah Zarah from within them, they still present a clear and present danger to you. Okay. If you look in the next pasuk, what does the Torah say in the next
None of
pasuk?
that ever happened.
What?
None of that ever happened successfully. They didn't come close to obliterating, demolishing,
No, they didn't. We fell short of that.
well short.
Well short of that. And we subsequently suffered the consequences which HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us is going to happen. We suffered those consequences. Okay.
The story of Shimshon was pathetic.
Even 500 years later, under Izebel and Ahab, and I mean,
Pathetic.
Last pasuk. I want to just finish this parak. Lo yeshvu ba'artzecha. They should not dwell in your land. Pen yachatiu oscha. What does that mean? Pen yachatiu oscha. They will cause you to transgress. Pen yachtiu oscha li. They will cause you to transgress against me. Ki sa'avod es Eloheihem ki yeh lecha limokesh. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying? It's a powerful indictment of human nature. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? It is human nature to succumb to the pressures of the majority of people around you. That is human nature. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a Torah that needs to be observed and that has lots of restrictions and lots of obligations. And we come into the land and we are now going to be interacting or surrounded by these people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ki yeh lecha limokesh. What is a mokesh?
Trap.
Mokesh is a trap. Meaning, what is in other words, when there's a trap, and let's say you're trapping an animal. Right? So you're trapping an animal, what happens? The animal doesn't know it's caught. Right? The animal doesn't sense the danger of the trap until it's too late. Until it's too late. Right? So that is what's going to happen to us. This is going to be a trap, and we're not even going to realize it until it's too late. Meaning until we are already sinning against God. It's sort of like a gradual slippery slope, right? That slowly, all right, you know what? All right, so we'll go out for dinner together. but we won't break bread. Okay, we'll go out for dinner together, we'll break bread, but we won't drink together. Okay, we'll go out for dinner together, we'll break bread, we'll drink together, but we won't marry your daughters. Okay, in other words, it becomes,
Go around it.
right, it becomes this slippery slope that as long as they are here, by definition, they are going to be for us a mokesh. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Harei elu ki mishamshin b'makom asher v'chein b'kama mikamos. The word, right? The word, if you look at it, what does the pasuk say? Lo yeshvu b'artzecha pen yachtiu oscha, right? Pen yachtiu es oscha li ki sa'avodas Elohehem ki yelech ala mokesh. So what is the idea here of what Rashi is telling us here is that the word ki is in place of asher, where it says don't allow them to dwell in the land, lest they cause you to transgress against me by or through worshiping their deities. Ki yiyeh lecha lamokesh. For it, this will be their trap. In other words, their trap will be, if you think back for a second to Benos Midyan, right? What happened with Benos Midyan in the Midbar, right?
Well, they use their sexuality.
In other words, what did they do? Yeah, but they used their sexuality, but what was the purpose of their sexuality? In other words, they attracted the men, but what was the purpose of it?
Draw them
To wean
towards-
them away from
The purpose of it was to get them to worship their deities, right? In other words, it was like, come into the back. Oh, you want to come into the back with me? Fine. But first, before you come in, leave your shoes here and bow down to this deity, right? So that's ultimately the idea, right? That's ultimately the idea, is that all of these, the force of Avodah Zarah was a very, very powerful force. It was almost a passionate kind of force. Until the Gemara records the Chachamim davened for the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah to be destroyed. Because for us it's very hard to understand Avodah Zarah.
Yeah.
But in those days it was very powerful, and it would be for us a trap. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu says this is what's going to happen. Not you're going to sin and then this is going to happen, but this is going to be a trap for you, and it's going to cause you to sin against me.
So when did the power of Avodah Zarah, wane? When did it?
So it's during the time of the Gemara.
The time of Gemara, so it's Roman times.
Yeah.
Began to wane.
Christianity popped in.
Right. Well,
I mean, Christianity is pretty much across the board. We say not Avodah Zarah, but the attraction.
I mean, Constantine and pagan, was against paganism. They undid, and as Christians conquered, they got rid of paganism.
Right. Well, paganism was Avodah Zarah.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right. Right. Okay, so this is, right, these, up until now, these have been the directions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving to Moshe Rabbeinu, meaning, okay, you're going to go into the land, this is what's going to happen, I'm sending an angel before you, he's going to wipe out the nation, he's going to hand the land over to you, you're going to have to destroy the people, you're going to have to destroy their gods. Everything that we've spoken about here, of course it didn't play out this way. Because what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying was going to happen was thwarted by Bnei Yisrael. Because of the fact that we sent in the Meraglim and we were afraid of the report of the Meraglim and we didn't have the Emunah to go into Eretz Yisrael, all of this changed. All of this changed. So it's a clear indication of the power of